Admiral Gray stood at the bridge of the Last Hope, watching another world burn. His hands trembled as he gripped the command rail, but his voice remained steady. The enemy they called the Swarm had taken another system, and with it, the lives of billions. "Status report," he ordered, his eyes fixed on the dying planet below. "The colony is lost, sir," replied First Officer Lake. "The Swarm has consumed 80% of the surface. No survivors detected." She paused, her blue skin turning pale. "This is the 12th world this month." The massive view screen showed scenes of horror that would haunt Gray for years to come. Black clouds of tiny ships covered the planet like locusts, stripping away everything in their path. The Swarm didn't just defeat their enemies. They ate them, turning all organic matter into fuel for their endless expansion. Gray had seen the finest warriors of 50 species fall before them. The proud battle fleets of the Galactic Council, once thought invincible, now lay in ruins across hundreds of star systems. Their most advanced weapons, developed over thousands of years, meant nothing to an enemy that could adapt to any attack within hours. "Admiral," called out Scanner Officer Reed, "long-range sensors are picking up something interesting." The Swarm's next vector. He stopped, checking his readings again. They're heading toward an isolated system. Single star, 8 planets, only 1 inhabited. Gray walked over to Reed's station. "Show me." A hologram appeared, displaying a small solar system. The third planet caught Gray's attention, a blue-green marble wrapped in white clouds. "The inhabitants call it Earth," Reed explained. "They're primitive by our standards. They've only reached their own moon. They don't even have faster-than-light travel yet." Gray felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Another world of innocence, about to be consumed by the nightmare that was the Swarm. He turned to Communications Officer Wells. "Send a message to the Council. They need to know about this." The response came faster than expected. Gray read it twice, not believing his eyes. "They're abandoning Earth to its fate," he announced to his bridge crew. "The Council is pulling all remaining forces back to protect the core worlds." "But sir," Lake protested, "there are billions of people on that planet. They don't even know what's coming for them. The Council says they're too primitive to save, that giving them warning would only cause panic, and that we can't spare the resources to defend them." Gray's voice was bitter. "They say Earth will buy us time to strengthen our defenses." The bridge fell silent. They had all seen too many worlds fall, too many civilizations end. Some of them had lost their own homeworlds to the Swarm. But something about sacrificing an innocent planet, letting billions die in ignorance, felt different, felt wrong. "Sir," Reed spoke up again, "I've been studying their transmissions. These humans, they're different. They fight each other constantly. Their military technology evolves at an incredible rate. They've split the atom, reached space, and connected their whole world in communications networks in just a few hundred years." Gray looked back at the hologram of Earth. "It doesn't matter now. Without faster-than-light technology, without energy shields, without quantum weapons, they don't stand a chance. The Swarm will consume them like all the others." Lake stepped forward. "Shouldn't we at least warn them? Give them a chance to prepare?" "Our orders are clear," Gray replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We're to fall back to the core worlds immediately." As the Last Hope prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Gray took one final look at the image of Earth. Something about Reed's words stuck in his mind. These humans, these primitives who fought each other constantly, what would they do when faced with a real enemy? "May whatever gods they believe in help them," he whispered. "They're going to need it." The Last Hope vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth to its fate. But fate, as the Galactic Council would soon learn, had other plans. Because they didn't know humans, they had no idea what humans could do when their backs were against the wall. They thought it was all over. They were wrong. The Swarm arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly as their patterns predicted. Their black ships darkened Pluto's sky like a cloud of metal insects, their hive mind already tasting victory. They had consumed 1,000 worlds. This primitive planet would be no different. But the swarm was wrong. Captain Tom Stone of the Earth Defense Force stood on the bridge of the EDF Defender, humanity's first true warship. Built in secret over the past decade, the Defender and her sister ships represented everything humanity knew about warfare, adapted for space. "Multiple contacts approaching Neptune, sir," reported Radar Officer Miller. "Their numbers. They're off the charts." Stone nodded calmly. He'd studied the footage recovered from dead worlds, learned everything he could about how the swarm fought. "Remember your training. We've prepared for this." The truth was, humanity had known they weren't alone for years. Damaged alien ships, fragments of battles, and weak transmissions had reached Earth. The governments of the world had made a choice: unite or die. They chose to unite. "All ships, battle formation Delta," Stone ordered. "Let them come to us." The Earth fleet looked tiny compared to the swarm. Just 30 ships against thousands. But these ships were different from anything the swarm had faced before. They weren't elegant like alien vessels. They were brutal, practical machines built for war. "They're accelerating," Miller announced, entering Jupiter's orbit. Stone pressed a button on his command chair. "This is Captain Stone, to all ships. You know what they expect. They expect us to be easy prey, to panic, to break. But we're human beings. We've been fighting wars since we could walk upright. Now we get to show the galaxy what that means." The swarm moved faster now, confident in their victory. They had faced greater fleets, more advanced weapons. These primitives would fall like all the others. The first surprise came at Mars. The swarm flew right into a field of nuclear mines. "Detonation successful," Miller reported with a grin. "Enemy formation disrupted. Estimated 20% casualties." The swarm reeled, shocked by the primitive but effective weapons. They had expected energy shields, not the brutal simplicity of nuclear explosions in space. Before they could recover, Stone gave his next order: "Launch fighters." From hidden bases on Mars and its moons, hundreds of small ships roared to life. Unlike the elegant single-pilot craft of other races, these were flying tanks, heavily armored and armed with weapons that would be considered crude by galactic standards. "Railguns active," Weapons Officer Baker reported. "Loading tungsten rounds." The swarm tried to adapt, to analyze this new enemy. But humans didn't fight like other races. There was no pattern to analyze, no single strategy to counter. Each human ship fought differently, each commander making their own decisions. "They're splitting up," Miller called out. "Trying to surround us." Stone smiled. "Spring the trap." From behind Earth's moon, more ships appeared. Not warships this time, but converted cargo vessels. They opened their doors, releasing clouds of debris. Millions of pieces of metal, creating an artificial asteroid field that shredded the swarm's lighter ships. The battle raged for hours. The swarm lost ship after ship, unable to comprehend an enemy that used such primitive but effective tactics. They had never faced an opponent who would sacrifice a ship just to ram it into a larger enemy vessel. Never dealt with weapons as simple and devastating as masses of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. Finally, the remains of the swarm fleet retreated, leaving nearly half their numbers destroyed. On the Defender's bridge, Stone watched them go. "Damage report," he ordered. "We lost 8 ships," Miller replied. "But sir, we did it. We actually did it." Stone shook his head. "No, this was just the first wave. They'll be back, and they'll be ready for what we did today." He looked at the Earth, beautiful and blue on his view screen. "But so will we. And now they know something they didn't know before." "What's that, sir?" "They know that humans fight back." Admiral Gray couldn't believe the reports he was reading. Earth, the primitive world they had abandoned, had not only survived the swarm's attack, they had driven them back. He stood before the Galactic Council, trying to make sense of it all. "How is this possible?" asked High Counselor Ward, his crystalline form shimmering with confusion. "They don't even have proper space warfare technology." Before Gray could answer, the chamber doors opened. A human walked in, wearing what looked to the council like primitive cloth armor, but was actually a formal military uniform. Major James Smith walked with the confidence of someone who had faced death and won. "Perhaps I can answer that question," Smith said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We've been fighting wars for our entire history. It's not about having the best technology. It's about how you use what you have." The council members whispered among themselves. They had never seen a species so direct. "Please explain," Gray said, genuinely curious. He remembered this planet, remembered leaving them to die. Smith pulled out a small device and projected images into the air. "This is human history. We fought with sticks and stones." The images showed ancient battles. "We fought with swords and shields." More images flashed by. "We fought with guns, tanks, planes, and nuclear weapons." "But those are all primitive weapons," one council member objected. Smith smiled. "Exactly. We've learned to fight with whatever we have. When the swarm came, we didn't have your advanced shields or energy weapons. So we used what we did have: nuclear mines, railguns, and most importantly, human creativity." He showed footage from the battle at Mars. The council watched in amazement as human ships performed maneuvers they had never seen before. "You see," Smith continued, "the swarm thinks like one being. They expect their enemies to follow patterns, to fight in ways that make sense. We don't do that. Each human commander makes their own decisions. We're unpredictable." Gray stepped forward. "But surely you must have taken heavy losses, fighting with such basic weapons." "We lost ships, yes, but we understand something that the swarm doesn't. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. We've played chess for centuries. It's in our blood." The council chambers fell silent as Smith walked to the center of the room. "We're not here to ask for help. We're here to offer it. The swarm will be back, stronger than before. But now we know how they think, how they fight. And we have a plan." "A plan?" High Counselor Ward leaned forward. "What kind of plan?" "The kind that only humans would think of," Smith replied. He pressed another button on his device, showing designs for new weapons and tactics. "We've studied your technology, combined it with our warfare experience. We don't need fancy energy weapons. We need weapons that work, tactics that surprise, and soldiers who can think for themselves." Gray watched as the council members studied the humans' presentations. He saw the moment they began to understand. These weren't the primitives they had abandoned. These were warriors unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. "Major Smith," Gray said, "when we left Earth to its fate, we thought we were leaving you to die. I apologize for that." Smith shook his head. "Don't apologize, Admiral. If you had tried to protect us, we might have relied on you instead of ourselves. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face their challenges alone." As the council debated, Smith stood quietly, watching. He knew what would happen next. The swarm thought they had seen everything humanity could do. They were wrong. The real fight was just beginning. Commander Jack Reed stood in the shadows of an asteroid, watching his prey through the view screen. His ship, the Ghost Walker, was painted black as space itself. No lights, no signals, just waiting. This wasn't how space battles were supposed to be fought, but humans had never cared much about supposed to. "Target approaching," whispered Lieutenant Brown over the comm. Her ship was hidden behind another asteroid, 2 kilometers away. 4 more ships waited in similar positions, scattered through the field. The swarm ships moved slowly through the asteroid field, their hive mind confident that no enemy would dare attack them here. They had adapted to human weapons now, developed better armor against railguns and nuclear devices. But humans had been adapting too. "Remember," Reed said softly to his crew, "we're not here to destroy them all. We're here to make them afraid. The alien members of his crew, 3 council specialists who had volunteered to learn human tactics, looked confused. The concept of fear as a weapon was new to them. Now, Reed ordered. 6 human ships powered up at once, their engines burning hot. They didn't fire their weapons. Instead, they rammed into the swarm formation at full speed, their hulls covered in a special acid that Earth scientists had developed. The acid wasn't meant to destroy the swarm ships, just to eat through their outer sensors. The swarm panicked, their hive minds suddenly blind in spots. They fired randomly, trying to hit enemies they couldn't see properly. Phase 2, Reed commanded. From their hiding spots, his ships launched clouds of tiny drones. Not weapons, just small machines broadcasting random signals, creating false targets, jamming communications. For a hive mind that relied on perfect information, it was like being lost in a fog. They're breaking formation, Brown reported with satisfaction. Just like you said they would, Commander. Reed nodded. The swarm wasn't used to fighting blind. They weren't used to enemies they couldn't predict. Most importantly, they weren't used to feeling afraid. Launch the real attack, he ordered. Hidden in the drone cloud, actual weapons now approached the swarm ships. Not the big, obvious weapons they expected from humans. These were tiny, precise things that targeted specific weak points in the swarm's armor, points that Council scientists had identified but never found a way to exploit. The swarm tried to retreat, but in their confusion, they scattered in different directions. Some ships crashed into asteroids. Others fired on their own allies, tricked by the false signals. A few managed to escape, but that was part of the plan. Let them go, Reed told his pilots. Let them tell the others what happened here. When the dust settled, half the swarm fleet was destroyed or damaged. Reed's ships hadn't fired a single major weapon. Back at the Council station, Admiral Gray watched the battle recordings in amazement. I don't understand, he said to Reed. You could have destroyed them all. Why didn't you? Reed smiled. Because dead enemies can't spread fear. Those ships that escaped, they'll tell the hive mind what happened, how they were attacked by enemies they couldn't see or predict, how their perfect communication was turned against them, how they felt helpless. You're fighting their mind, not just their ships, Gray realized. Exactly. The swarm thinks it's unstoppable because it's never lost, never felt fear, never doubted itself. We're teaching it to feel those things. As if to prove his point, reports started coming in from other sectors. Swarm ships were becoming more cautious, sometimes retreating from positions at just the rumor of human ships in the area. This is just the beginning, Reed said, looking at the battle data. We're not just going to beat the swarm. We're going to make them question everything they think they know about warfare. For the first time since the war began, hope started to spread through the Council worlds. The humans weren't just fighting. They were changing the very nature of space combat itself. Admiral Mary Stone stood in Earth's largest shipyard, watching thousands of workers build humanity's new fleet. The massive factory, once used to build cars, now created spaceships. Where assembly lines had once made trucks and tanks, they now produced weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Amazing how fast we adapted, said Admiral Gray, who had become Earth's strongest ally in the Council. Your people learned our technology in months, not years. Stone smiled. That's because we didn't try to copy it. We made it our own. She pointed to a nearby ship under construction. See that? It looks messy, ugly even, but it works better than the original Council design. The ship she pointed to was a perfect example of human engineering. It had thick armor instead of energy shields, multiple backup systems instead of single advanced ones, and weapons that used simple physics instead of complex energy fields. Operation Hammer begins tomorrow, Stone said, checking her watch. The swarm won't expect us to attack them directly. Not after all our hit-and-run tactics. Gray nodded. Are you sure about this plan? It seems crazy, Stone laughed. The best human plans usually do. In space, the swarm had gathered its largest fleet yet. They had learned from their defeats, adapted their tactics. They thought they were ready for anything humans could do. They were wrong. The first sign that something was different came when human ships appeared right in the middle of their formation. Not at the edges where they could run their usual guerrilla tactics, but in the very center. All ships, attack pattern Thunder. Admiral Stone commanded from her flagship, the Earth's Hope. Show them what we've learned. The human ships opened fire with weapons the swarm had never seen before. Railguns powered by alien energy cores. Missiles guided by Council targeting systems, but carrying human nuclear warheads. Simple, brutal, effective. They're trying to surround us, reported Captain Lee from Tactical. Just like we predicted. Stone smiled. Spring the trap. The human ships suddenly split apart, each section revealing what looked like broken pieces and debris. The swarm, thinking they had destroyed the human vessels, moved closer to confirm their kills. That's when the debris came to life. Each piece was actually a tiny ship, built in secret using miniaturized versions of Council technology. Thousands of them swarmed the larger swarm ships, attaching to their hulls and drilling through their armor. Status report, Stone demanded. 60% of swarm-heavy ships disabled, Lee replied. Their formation is breaking up. The swarm tried to adapt, but they couldn't cope with an enemy that fought on so many different levels at once. Big ships, little ships, electronic warfare, physical attacks. Humans used everything at their disposal. Admiral, Gray said with awe in his voice, I've never seen anything like this. You're not just beating them. You're making them look primitive. That's because they are primitive, Stone replied. They only know one way to fight. We know thousands. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, the largest swarm fleet ever assembled had been reduced to scattered remnants, fleeing in panic. For the first time in the war, they had suffered a major defeat. Send the message to Earth and the Council, Stone ordered. Operation Hammer is a success. We have our first major victory. As celebration broke out across the bridge, Stone remained focused on her screens. She knew this wasn't the end. The swarm would adapt again, come back stronger. But now everyone in the galaxy knew something important. Humans weren't just fighting the war. They were changing it. And they were winning. What's our next move? Gray asked. Stone's eyes gleamed with determination. Now we show them why you should never corner a human. We're taking the fight to their home systems. Lieutenant John Ross crouched in his stealth suit, floating in the darkness of space. Around him, 5 other members of the newly formed Space Special Forces moved silently toward their target, a massive swarm command ship. Remember, he whispered through the tactical comm, we're looking for their central nerve cluster. The Queen has to be controlling them from somewhere. The Council had said it was impossible to board a swarm ship. They were right. It was impossible using their methods. But humans have been boarding enemy ships since the age of wooden sailing vessels. They just needed the right tools and the right mindset. Contact, whispered Sergeant Wilson. Hull breach point ahead. The team moved forward, their suits making them nearly invisible against the black of space. The swarm never posted guards on their outer hull. Why would they? No one had ever tried to break in before. Plant the charges, Ross ordered. Their explosives weren't the usual kind. They were special devices that mimicked the swarm's own acid-based hull repair system. When they detonated, the ship's automated defenses would think it was just a normal hull breach being fixed. The explosion was silent in space. The hole it created was small, just big enough for one person at a time. We're in, Ross reported back to the Ghost Fleet Command. Beginning Phase 2. Inside the swarm ship, everything was organic looking, like being inside a giant insect. The team moved carefully, using hand signals instead of radio. Their suits protected them from the ship's internal sensors by mimicking the swarm's own biosignatures. This is incredible, Admiral Gray's voice came through their secure channel. "No one has ever successfully infiltrated a swarm vessel before." "That's because everyone else tried to fight them head-on," Ross replied quietly. "We're hunting them instead." The team moved deeper into the ship, following the energy readings their suits detected. Years of special operations experience on Earth had taught humans how to move undetected, how to think like predators instead of soldiers. Suddenly, Wilson held up his hand. "Found something. Energy readings are off the charts behind this wall." Ross checked his scanner and smiled. "That's it. The nerve cluster. Their whole hive mind network runs through nodes like this. They planted their second set of charges, these ones designed by human scientists who had studied the swarm's biology. Not to destroy, but to disrupt." "All teams report in," Ross called softly. 4 other teams, spread across different swarm command ships, responded with confirmation. They had all reached their targets. "Execute." The charges detonated simultaneously across 5 swarm ships. The effect was instant. The hive mind's perfect coordination suddenly became chaos. Ships started moving randomly, their crews unable to connect properly with each other. "It's working," Gray announced excitedly. "The swarm fleet is in disarray. They can't coordinate their actions." Ross and his team were already moving back to their exit point. Behind them, the swarm ship's crew rushed around in confusion, experiencing something they had never felt before: isolation. "Ghost Fleet, move in," Ross ordered as his team reached space again. "Hit them while they're blind." The hidden human fleet appeared from its hiding spots around the system. But instead of attacking directly, they used the confusion to plant more disruption devices on more ships. The swarm's mighty fleet was falling apart from the inside. Back on the command ship, Admiral Gray watched in amazement. "You didn't destroy their ships," he realized. "You destroyed their ability to work together." "Exactly," Ross replied as his team returned to their ship. "The swarm's greatest strength was their unity, so we didn't try to break their technology. We broke their connection to each other." As the battle turned into a complete rout, Ross allowed himself a small smile. The swarm had thought they knew everything about warfare, but they had never faced an enemy who could think like humans, an enemy who knew that sometimes the smallest team could take down the largest foe if they just hit them in the right spot. The combined fleet of humanity and the Galactic Council hung in space above the swarm's home system. 5,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled, prepared for the final battle. On the bridge of the flagship Earth's Hope, Admiral Mary Stone looked at the massive swarm fleet protecting their homeworld. "All ships report ready," Captain Lee announced. "The Council fleet is in position." Admiral Gray stood beside Stone, his alien features showing concern. "The Swarm Queen is down there. All our intelligence confirms it. But the defense fleet is twice our size." Stone nodded. "Size isn't everything. We've proved that again and again." She turned to her communication officer. "Open a channel to all ships." The officer nodded, and Stone began to speak. "This is Admiral Stone. For years, the galaxy lived in fear of the swarm. Everyone thought it was over, until humans joined the fight. We showed the galaxy that numbers don't win battles. Courage, creativity, and determination do. Today, we end this war. Not just for Earth, not just for the Council, but for every world that has suffered under the swarm. All ships, battle positions." The human fleet moved forward first, using tactics that would have seemed insane just a few years ago. Small ships darted between larger ones, creating confusion in the swarm's formations. Special forces teams, hidden in seemingly abandoned ships, waited for their moment. The battle erupted with incredible violence. The swarm had learned from their defeats, but humans had kept innovating. For every tactic the swarm had countered, humanity had developed 3 new ones. "Their defenses are stronger than we expected," Lee reported as another wave of attacks was pushed back. "We can't get close enough to the planet." Stone watched the battle carefully. She had expected this. The swarm would fight hardest to protect their queen. That's why she had prepared something special. "Signal the Ghost Fleet," she ordered. "Execute Operation Lightning." Hidden in the chaos of battle, stealth ships began moving into position. Lieutenant Ross and his Special Forces teams were already aboard them, ready for their most daring mission yet. But the swarm had one last surprise. As the Ghost Fleet moved in, massive weapons platforms emerged from hiding spots around the planet. Energy beams tore through space, destroying ships on both sides. "New weapons detected," Lee shouted. "They're tearing through our shields like they're not even there." Stone watched as ship after ship was destroyed. The Council fleet began to retreat. Even some human ships turned to run. The Queen had saved her best weapons for this moment. "All power to the engines," Stone ordered suddenly. "Set course directly for the largest weapon platform." Gray grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? The Earth's hope won't survive that kind of attack." Stone smiled sadly. "Sometimes the Queen has to sacrifice herself to win the game." She opened the ship-wide comm one last time. "All hands, abandon ship. That's an order. Get to the escape pods." "Admiral," Gray protested, "there has to be another way." "There isn't, but while they focus on us," she nodded toward her tactical screen, where Ross's teams were using the chaos to slip through the planet's defenses. "Lieutenant Ross, you have 10 minutes to find that Queen. Make them count." The Earth's hope charged forward, drawing all fire from the weapon platforms. As escape pods launched from her hull, the massive ship began to break apart. But she kept going, straight toward her target. "It's been an honor," Stone said to her bridge crew as alarms blared around them. "Humanity proved something these past few years. We proved that it's never over until the last person stops fighting." The flagship crashed into the weapon platform at full speed. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. In that moment of chaos, Ross's teams found their target. The Queen never saw them coming. Hours later, as the swarm ships fell silent across the galaxy, Admiral Gray stood in the council chamber. "In honor of Admiral Stone and all those who gave their lives, I propose we create a new galactic defense force, and I propose that Earth lead it. They've more than earned that right." The vote was unanimous. The species that everyone had abandoned as primitive now stood as the galaxy's greatest defenders. They had proved something that the galaxy would never forget. Never underestimate humans.